zone of, this is a term you need to understand. So remember, guys, I don't want something and your assistant. All right, so let's do this practice question.
Social worker recommend first.
So you gotta be mind that is something that, let's do that. Moving on, they're going to talk about Vygotsky. All right, so we're going to talk about him a little bit. The zone of proximal development and scaffolding. All right, so when we're going with Vygotsky's, we're going to talk about the zone of proximal development. This is a term you need to understand. That is a gap between where a learner can do something independently and what they can achieve with more skilled support and help from another individual. So that's why I shared as teachers, they use these terms all the time, and I didn't, recognize it. It was like, oh yeah, we do that. Scaffolding is very important term, and you see it a lot. That is pretty much temporary structured support provided by a teacher, a therapist, someone in that profession line of work, and then you gradually remove it as the learner begins to gain more competence. So you start here, you do a little bit more hand holding, and as time goes on, you can just kind of loosen the reins a little bit and pull back because they're able to do those skills, and they have learned things a little bit more clearly and more efficiently than what maybe they knew initially. All right, so understanding that learning is social and cultural. Language is a critical tool for the thought development, and cognitive development occurs through social interaction. So this is Vygotsky's sociocultural theory. So obviously this theory is focused on the development socially, culturally. All right, so when it comes to Vygotsky, you have a lot of clinical application. This is how we're applying the information. So remember, guys, I don't want you guys just learning a lot of content. I want you guys to understand it and know how to apply it if you see it in these questions. So when it comes to scaffolding, you're breaking down complex things. So think about a social worker is working with a client. Maybe you're trying to help them find employment or something. Your role is like a case manager or something along those lines, a community something, and you're assisting them with that process, or maybe you're assisting them with managing their anger. Use any of those examples. And initially, when you're working with individuals, whether you're helping them find a job or managing their anger, you're going to do things in smaller steps. You're kind of chopping it up a little bit and holding their hand as they go through the process. So if you're teaching somebody how to manage their anger, first they have to identify that they have an anger issue, and then what are some of the things that make them angry? What are some of the triggers? What are you going to do now? When this trigger happens, what do you typically do? What can we do? You see, you're taking little steps to help guide them, and then eventually they grow their wings and they can fly and do things more independently. That's pretty much what scaffolding is. You pretty much have gradual release of support. So you start with levels of guidance, and then you gradually decrease the support as the client gains more competence. Social context and group work. It's really important to understand the power of social learning. Social learning is huge. You know how they say monkey see, monkey do. That is a real thing. People see things, they around people, they hear things, and they begin to follow and do those similar things because they feel like they can learn, or this person might have a better advantage or more knowledge or more advanced in certain areas. So if you do what they do, that's going to help you become more knowledgeable, more advanced in certain things and areas. That is definitely something to keep in mind when you're looking at the social context or group work. That's why group work is so powerful in a good way, but there can be some negative things that take place with that as well. Like earlier today, I wouldn't say Jerry telling you guys that he studied Latin to learn the test is a bad thing, but half of the people in the group probably wrote it down in a sticky and was like, oh my God, does the test have some Latin? Is that the problem? So you gotta be mind that is something that a small thing, but it does, and I will go back and say you don't need to learn Latin, but you do need to know the root words when you're reading. That's why I say this is a reading test. Because if you understand the root of a word, sometimes you don't even need to know what the word is. You can kind of dissect it and figure out what it is. So when he mentioned the Latin part, I kind of got it because certain terms necessarily learn Latin, but there's certain words that people just don't know. And they're like, I saw this word, I've never seen it before, and I just said, forget it. I couldn't think anymore. But what was the root of the word? And did you know the other three answers to the question? If you knew the other three options and you knew those, it didn't matter if you didn't know that one. Use process of elimination. That's also a technique. All right, assessing the ZPD. What is the ZPD? Can somebody tell me what that is?
Zone of Proximal Development.
Absolutely. Assess not just what the client can do alone, what they can do with assistance. That's also what you're doing when you're assessing the zone of proximal development. All right. This identifies the potential growth and the appropriate level of intervention as needed when you're working with clients. All right, so let's do this practice question. Let's see. I didn't see anybody hand raised just yet. Let's see. Who's going to be the first to raise their hand and say, I want this question?
A social worker is developing a treatment plan for an 8-year-old client with learning difficulties. In math, the child can complete simple addition problems independently, but struggle with multiple steps word problems. The teacher reports that with one-on-one guidance, the child can successfully solve these problems. Using Vygotsky's sociocultural theory, what intervention should the social worker recommend first. It said A, refer the child for special education testing to develop if learning disability is present. Recommend the child repeat a grade to master foundation skill before advancing. C, implementing scaffolding technique which teacher provides gradually decrease a child gain competence. Let's say C also.
So everyone's going with C. All right, there we go. Implement scaffolding. So again, we're leading the group with the answer, but you guys have an understanding now. Whenever you see scaffolding or you answering a question and you see that term come up, you're like, oh, that's an easy point. No brainer moving forward. You guys got that.